Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 25 on establishing a positive learning environment. This is our second lecture on classroom management, positive learning environment, and so we are going to jump right in. Of course, classroom management is important for you on the road to what? Becoming the most amazing teacher that you can become. So these are just some of the sayings that you as well as your colleagues from past years have hoped that you would say to a grade 4 class in order to create a positive learning environment. So thank you for working so hard today. Kindness is never wasted. Are you okay? You guys nailed that. How can I help? Well, we will work through this together. How does that make you feel? I believe in you. Amazing job, students. I'm very proud of all of you today. Remember the first day rules. What is something we can work on for next time? Let's remember to treat each other with respect and tell me what's going on. So these were some of yours as well as combined with some of your colleagues from past years around what would you like to hear yourself saying as a teacher in order to support a positive learning environment for your students. Okay, so to get us going and collaborate, what I want you to do is right now, I want you to write a 2 to 3 sentence description of either you as a student or a student you know, and his or her negative behavior in a classroom in elementary, junior high, or high school. So include what were the actions of the students, so what were they actually doing that was a sort of negative behavior? What was the action of the teacher? What was the impact on learning for other students, and what was the impact on classroom community? So think about that as a bit of a jumping off point to why we talked about why students misbehave and why it's important to have a positive classroom environment, and this will hopefully get us going in thinking specifically about what this looks like in the classroom. Okay, so today we're going to pull the topic into specific student behavior and looking at kind of what does that look like in the classroom. So to get us thinking about student behavior, let's start with, are students more out of control in 2020 than they were in 2010, 1990, 1930, 1880, 1780, 1460, or 400? What do you think? Are our students that we are dealing with in 2020 and you will be dealing with in 2022, 23, 24, whenever you graduate, are they more out of control than ever before? So what I want you to do is I'm going to read this quote out, and I want you to take a guess at what year this quote might have come from. Not necessarily a person, but a year. The children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority, they show disrespect for elders, and love chatter in place of exercise. Children are now tyrants, not the servants of their households. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up dainties at the table, cross their legs, and tyrannize their teachers. So, what era? 2010, 1990, 1930, 1880. What era do you think this is from? Take a guess. Okay, this is a quote from Socrates. So 399 BC. So it's interesting because I think we always demonize the generation after us. And so does the actual current generation always blame the next generation, right? Like I blamed the older generation for the nuclear arms race. And now this generation, will they blame us for climate issues? And do we as a generation always view the next generation as being lazy and irresponsible and not wanting to work? He's starting to, we've heard these things. So again, I think it's interesting to think about that. Is that where's our foundation of thinking about our students? Is it that they're just kids? Kids are kids. They've been the same. They'll do the same things if it was in 400 or 1460 or 1930 or 2020, or does this generation have some particular enigmatic characteristics. Okay, so I think it might be a bit of a combination of both. We're going to have a look at that. Okay, so let's look up some classroom management planning. So if you're starting to actually say, okay, how am I actually going to manage these particular 24 students? What you want to do is you want to strike a balance between, and I think this is huge when we're talking about classroom management, preventative strategies and reactive interventions. Okay, so often we focus on managing problematic behaviors after, or we react. Prevention, setting it up so that we prevent the misbehavior from ever occurring, is a much better intervention plan. So we're going to talk about a lot about preventative strategies over this lecture and the next lecture, but we're also going to talk about some reactive interventions. What happens when something in the classroom, even when you've set it up properly, things happen, obviously, what can you do? Okay, so we're going to I kind of have broken this down into minor interventions. I'm going to come back to this. Moderate interventions, serious interventions. Okay, so and then some aggression and bullying. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But let's go back to here. So minor interventions, these are things in the classroom that don't really disrupt the classroom or the activities and the learning, but they're just, they throw you off, and they could potentially escalate to bigger things. So things like calling out, if you ask a question, you ask the kids to put up their hand and somebody just blurts out the answer anyways. Maybe they just leave their seat whenever they feel like it, and that's not cool in your particular classroom. Maybe they're just chit-chatting. They're just like talking, whispering in the back, but it's distracting some of the students around them, and it's potentially distracting you. Maybe they're using their phone in the class when you have asked them not to. That's going to be a big issue for you guys, is phone usage. So again, these are minor interventions. So nothing that's major, but it's distracting. It's distracting you, it's distracting potential students, and it could eventually become something bigger. So these are some strategies that you can use. So use nonverbal cues, just like make eye contact with the student who is chit-chatting and just give them like the teacher face, right? And generally that will alleviate a lot of things. Just shake your head, just be like, don't do that. A little finger wag, I see you, that kind of a thing. And then you move on. How long did that take? Like 1 or 2 seconds, and you've maintained the dignity of the child, and you haven't disrupted the flow of your lesson. That's kind of the key to these minor interventions, is you want to nip them in the bud quickly, but without disrupting your flow of the lesson. Keep the activities moving. Try not to have any downtime or free time. So, at the end of the lesson and the bell's going to ring and you got 5 minutes, free time is the death. That is where the kids will get in trouble, and because it's unstructured. So work those kids right up to the bell time. Keep the activities moving so they have no down or free time in there. Okay, just ask them a content-driven question. This is from Jennifer Gonzalez, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But just if somebody's not paying attention, just ask them, "Hey, Jenny, can you read out number 5, please?" And again, it's not a catching them; it's just getting them back on track with something they can answer, so that they have success, so that it's not a negative contact. Work on your transitions. So in your lessons, you see a section on your lesson plan about transitions. So if you're moving students from the carpet back to their desks, how can you do that so that it's clean and efficient, and so that they are not pushing and shoving as they go back to the desk? So think about those transitions, because oftentimes that's where student teachers get in trouble, is they haven't thought about kids actually physically moving from the carpet to the desk and all of the chaos that can ensue as they move. Use your actual teacher proximity. So if a child is chatting away and you just like wander on up and like hang out at their desk beside them, generally kids won't continue to chit chat while you're standing right there. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to do anything. Just hang out there for like 5-10 seconds, make it a little uncomfortable for the student, and then keep on going. Redirect the behavior, remind them what they're supposed to be doing. Remember, you're working on your free verse poem. Again, sometimes they get distracted and then they can't bring themselves back. So just redirect the behavior. Reiterate instructions. If lots of students don't understand the instructions, then chaos will ensue. Again, that's why on your lesson plan template, we have a little section that says, how will you know that students understand the instructions? This will then help. So if they go out into group work and they actually know what they're supposed to do, there's not going to be as much misbehavior as if they get onto the groups and they're like, what are we supposed to do? Huh? What's going on? It's kind of like you guys out in breakout rooms when you don't know. When you go, what are we supposed to be doing? You waste a lot of time. The same thing with elementary kids in there. Okay, so directly deal with the child. You want to, again, make eye contact, and you might want to just say, no, that's not appropriate. And that's it. You don't have to go into a big diatribe about what's going on, and really you don't want to issue an ultimatum, right? If you say something like either you stop or you leave, you better be ready to make that child leave. Remember what I talked about? Fair and consistent. Whatever you say, you better be ready to follow through. Deal directly with the child as quickly and efficiently as you can, and then leave it. Don't have a big lecture in front of the class. And provide choices. Put some responsibility in the child's hand. Either this will happen or this will happen. And if you continue, so something like if you continue to eat candy around the computer and deny or defy our respect our classroom rule, you will not be able to play games on the computer. And then again, you must be consistent in upholding that. Okay. Excuse me. Cult of Pedagogy thoughts. These are your readings for this week. And what we're going to do in Collaborate is I want you to be ready to discuss, to discuss the ideas from Distract the Distractor podcast. It's about a 5-minute podcast, and How to Stop Yelling at Your Students. This is a 25-minute podcast, but you can also just read the transcript. I think I really like Jennifer Gonzalez, the author of this writing, because she combines theory with practice and then gives you some really practical ideas of how to deal with classroom management. So have a go with that, and we're going to talk about them and Collaborate. So don't depend on your colleagues to bring the answers. Bring the answers. Okay. Hang on. I'm going to grab my water here. We then jump into, so you've tried all your minor interventions with your students and it's escalated. Your classroom management issues have escalated. So when you talk about escalation into moderate interventions, that's things like students are really abusing privileges. So they just continue to eat candy at the computer in defiance of what you have asked them to do. They're really disrupting activities. Like you cannot continue because they're either talking so loud or they're bugging kids around them, and you can't control it just with proximity and with talking directly to the student. Or they're really interfering with your teaching. Like you can't continue your role of the lesson. So these are some possible things that you could do when you're looking at modern intervention. You can withhold a privilege or desired activity. So if students normally can move freely around the room, but they can't go out of the room without letting you know, and if one student leaves the room, then maybe the privilege of moving around the room freely can be revoked for that particular child. So that's withholding a privilege or desired activity. You might want to create a behavioral contract. This is where you would actually write down some particular strategies for that child, and you can get the parents involved if you want, but not necessarily. You can do it just in class. And then if the child doesn't uphold, then you refer back to the contract, and then you go from there. Hopefully once it's written down, they usually take it a little bit more seriously. So hopefully that if you have a behavioral contract, the child will uphold it then. You can isolate or time out. There's some, controversy around this. You have to know your child, you have to know the parents, you have to know the school philosophy. But sometimes kids just kind of get overwhelmed and they maybe need a little bit of a timeout. So if you have a safe place for them to go, sending them out in the hallway is not necessarily safe, especially if the child could potentially be a runner, because they could actually take off on you, which is not what you want. So think about how you could give that child some isolation time. Maybe you have a tent in your classroom where they could actually just go into the tent and feel like they're alone. They can calm down, and then they can enter the classroom once they have calmed down and can live by the classroom rules. Okay, try to catch these kids doing something good. Oftentimes, kids who are at this level of needing moderate interventions, school is a very negative place. So try to catch them. Every kid does something good during the day. Try to catch them and then praise them in public about that. And that sometimes will really alleviate some of your moderate intervention, the necessity to intervene moderately. Holy cow, that was a bad sentence. Okay, avoid penalty connected to the subject. So making a child do an extra page of math because she was fooling around in math class is not a good link. You don't want to link the subject to the penalty, often, because then it creates a bad image about math, which is actually what you wanted them to do. As a music teacher, I always used to hate when I would hear teachers saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to make them sing in front of the class as a punishment if they are not paying attention." And I went, no, singing shouldn't be linked with punishment. Okay, so those are moderate interventions. Hang on, I'm just going to put my water down now. Okay, serious interventions. These are, and I don't think I have ever dealt with these in all my teaching years. So these are things like bullying, sexual harassment, like outright defiance towards the teacher. If you're up in junior and senior high, illegal substances, using illegal substance, violent behavior. Again, these are not going to be your, in most places, hopefully not going to be your common everyday occurrence. So this is where you would do a risk assessment. So you check if there's a risk assessment on the child in your room. There's usually a paper trail if this behavior has been going on for a while, and then you make sure you add to that documentation. Document everything: time, date, what was said, how you reacted, those kind of things. You want to consult with others. Don't suffer in silence. If there's something going on that's serious in your class with how a child is behaving, seek advice of the admin, of colleagues, and professionals, because usually, again, there's a paper trail with a child like this. Know about school policy around suspension and expulsion. Again, you want to know whether this child, if you suspend this child, what will happen, what is the protocol, all those kind of things. And then also prepare for the student's reentry. Oftentimes you are emotionally wound up, you are frustrated, you are angry potentially at this child. And so you have to think through as a professional, how am I going to bring this child back into my learning community without it being a negative situation. And that's hard. It's hard to do that. I had a colleague, a friend who, a grade 5 student totally destroyed her class, like flipped out and flipped desk, ruined, like absolutely destroyed the class. She spent hours cleaning it up. And then, 2 weeks later, the child came back and she said, I really had to work through my emotions about how to reintegrate that child into the class. So again, as a professional, that's part of what you have to do. Again, work with parents. Other than sort of minor incidents, you should make parents aware. So if they are at this moderate or serious intervention stage, parents need to be involved in this. You can send a note home, you can call, you can go through your principal, but do make sure that the parents know what is going on. If a child says, "Go ahead, my parents won't care," they don't care if you call them, still call home. Oftentimes it might be sometimes it'll be a bit of a bluff. The parents actually do care, and the child's just trying to bluff so that you won't call. Other times you just need to make sure that the parents know, so that if you need to take further steps, you have, again, done everything in your power to help this child be part of your classroom. Okay, and finally, aggression and bullying. Again, this is fighting. Most schools have 0% tolerance for fighting and have a policy for dealing with it. Usually in elementary, if you're a teacher, you can use your proximity and your teacher voice to stop a fight. So if you have like grade 2 girls fighting, you can usually just kind of be like, okay, I'm bigger than you, I'm going to use my good teacher voice, and they'll usually split. However, it's tricky, because if you get actually physically in between students and pull them apart, and then somebody slugs the other person while I would stay out of physical fights, especially if you're getting to junior high and high school. That's where you call the principal and you say, okay, there's a fight going on and I need support. But lots of time, if you go in there and just use your stern teacher voice, you can actually stop fights at most levels. Okay, again, if there is defiance or hostility towards teachers, avoid situation where it becomes power struggle. Again, you want to, if this is really aggressive or hostile, again, you would want to be bringing in the principal, the parents, all those things. And bullying. Again, bullying is a repeated and systematic abuse of physical and psychological power. So if you have a child who is consistently bullying other children, then you would talk to the principal, you would document, and sometimes there are primary preventions, so that's like a school-wide program, and then you would make sure that you go through the steps that are set up by the school-wide program. Or there's tertiary programs, where these are programs aimed specifically at helping students who are identified as the bully or the victim. And this is usually through a one-on-one counseling. So probably most schools have some kind of primary prevention, where this is a school-wide rule or standard, and then you would be working with those particular students individually from a bully or a victim point of view.